Well, welcome as we continue our series on Practical Tools Week, designed for nonprofits and ministries, talking about practical tools that they can use each and every single day. We first spent our time talking with Tim Cox on marketing and communication, specifically on cheap or low-cost tools that small to medium organizations can really use. Then from that point on, Johanna from Prison Fellowship came and talked about peer-to-peer fundraising and how do you bring in people on Facebook, Instagram to really be able to create all of these little donations through your network. From that point on, we had Alex Kim yesterday, who teaches at Trinity. Before that, he actually worked for a company that was consulting with the country of Singapore on creating smart cities. He gave us an overview on the introduction on innovation. And today we talk with three unique individuals, I would say, with ministries that are on more of the cutting edge on this whole idea of innovation. And so I'm very, very interested. We're talking with John Hurst over at SIL. He lives in Colorado Springs, right, John?
That's right. You got it.
Mary Bolander, who lives in Orlando, Florida, home of Disney World for many of you guys. Mary?
Yes, that's right. Thank you.
And James, who I was jokingly said before that every time I see him on his book cover or blog, he has the perfect tan. So James, welcome from Los Angeles.
I'm glad to show off the tan. What's up, y'all?
Yeah, I was telling Tom Lynn, your president, I said, Tom, James just has the perfect tan all the time for an Asian. Hey, so welcome. What part of Los Angeles are you in, James?
I'm in Torrance.
Got it, Torrance. Yeah. And so today, whether it's in Los Angeles, and we're also in, broadcasting with our partners in Chicago, and this will also be shared with some of our ministry partners in Jakarta, in Singapore, in Malaysia, and Nairobi. The whole idea is on innovation, because especially in light of this COVID, your 5-year plan definitely has changed. Your 3-year plan, your 1-year plan, you're now pivoting and operating, is it month to month based on cash flow? You're looking at 3-4 months with different plans, trying to figure out when you could travel, when you could meet in person, all of that stuff. And so that's why I have brought these guys on to share. Hey, let me just start off with this. James, I'm going to start off with you. Can you share a little bit about your role at InterVarsity? Same thing with you, Mary and John, and what made your organization create the role that you're in?
Sure. I serve as the Vice President of Strategy and Innovation for InterVarsity Christian Fellowship. And so, there's a couple of reasons. And what I do is the resources of the movement flow out of this department. So the planting chapter, discipleship and growth, multi-ethnic initiatives, our digital design house called Creative Labs, global engagement and justice, and evangelism. I think those are the ones that all fall under this banner. So the national directors of those things, we try to work together. And they created this role for us. This is a 3-year-old role now, and strategy and innovation. And those are held in tension and kept together, which some might argue might be bad for innovation. But one reason, the need that they created it, was that we were all, my joke was, for our national directors, I used to be the former director of evangelism, was that we're like the Book of Judges, where we all did what was right in our own eyes. So the movement wants us to work together so that we're not overwhelming what we call the field, the folks that are doing campus ministry on the ground, but also wanting to build into the long term that we would have the innovation practices to be able to look ahead and see what's coming up and try to orient around that. That if we're that research and development arm of the local church in some ways, since the stuff that we see on campus flows out in 5 to 10 years, then they wanted to also then be ahead of that so that we can be ahead of the curve.
Yeah. So James, how big is your team now? Or did you start off with just you and you had to build up your team?
A lot of the national, I built up some. The team is now 8 strong, with 5 of them being the national directors. It's some of them are already incumbent. Others, we were part of a big reorganization, and the national directors came into this new department.
You got it. Hey, I hope you guys don't mind. I suddenly hear thunder in the background. There's just pouring rain, so just wanted to let you know that's what that noise is. Yeah. Hey, Mary, what about yourself? Can you share a little bit about your role with Seeds Innovation Lab over in Orlando, and you're the development of facilitations there?
Yeah, for sure. So ours is kind of unique. We are a team, kind of a subset of a larger kind of mission and nonprofit here in Orlando, and so we are kind of the a piece of that, a team kind of created out of that. We were created out of the essentially understanding that creativity and innovation and flexibility had always been a core value of the organization, but it was never, we didn't have a process for it. We didn't have a system for it. It was, if you had asked people, they'd say, well, yeah, we're creative in the way that we do blank. Like that was the extent of our innovation. And so my now boss, he, because of different reasons, had to switch roles. And then in doing that, he started looking at what are other organizations, what do they do for innovation? What do businesses do? What does the world outside of our kind of bubble do? And so then was connected through different things to different local innovation labs. And then actually they came and taught a group of 13 of us from our full organization around innovation and design. Specifically, we use a process called design thinking. So we have a lot more training in that process. And then a group kind of formed out of that, myself and two others from that group of 13. It just made sense for us to transition into, we said, man, if we're going to do this and it's going to work, we have to do it like all the time. Like it can't just be something we're doing on the side, and trying to incorporate what we do into our broader community. So we started this, like our lab itself a couple of years ago, and then quickly realized it had to go outside of our organization. We couldn't, like it was, the opportunities were too much to just stay within our organization. And so we kind of broadened our view to the kind of the global mission faith-based community. So we see ourselves as equipping and training in that way.
Got it. So, Mary, James, a lot of times James works with InterVarsity. A lot of people, because of their time on college universities, know who InterVarsity is. For you, what does Seeds do?
Yeah, for sure. So we are we're essentially an innovation lab. So again, we see ourselves as we definitely do like design projects where groups come to us and bring their challenges and we help facilitate a solution. We like to say we do not give you your solution. Some innovation labs do that, but we really see ourselves as ability to equip. And so we equip, we train, and then again, we facilitate design projects as groups if that is what's appropriate for them. But we like to say it's like running a marathon. And so like innovation, like the ability to do it and the practice of it is like running a marathon. And so we see ourselves as teaching people how to run, running with them, like keep like encouraging them in their running, and then if needed, maybe like actually helping in the actual solution itself.
Got it. Hey, and let me ask you a quick question. I'll ask James back too. Before Seeds, what were you doing, or what was your major in college?
Yeah, so I was actually, I'm a nurse by trade. So I went to nursing school. I mean, it just makes no sense. Like God is just funny. And so I actually thought I would do that overseas. That was my plan. I was diagnosed with an autoimmune disease right before I graduated, and I just wasn't healthy enough to be overseas. And so then God just really shifted. And then from that, I became actually a recruiter for like missionaries, essentially, and loved that. I did that for a while, did mobilization, especially for like medical professionals who'd want to go to the field. And then literally from that, got invited to be part of that 13 that was trained. And then ended up I liked facilitation. Who knew? I had no idea. And so then jumped into this.
Very good. James, I know you grew up in Chicago, but what was your major in college?
Yeah, I went to school to be an electrical engineer. Ended up with a management science degree with a marketing option once I got my call to ministry. And most recently, before this role, I was the director of evangelism for InterVarsity.
Very, very good. And just so you know, Mary and James, I built cell towers for 10 years. I originally went to WashU thinking I was going to be a doctor. And so that was my first year.
I'm telling you, if we all could just map our stories, it's pretty hilarious. Like,
And John, what about yourself? Hey, first of all, I mean, SIL, what does SIL do?
Yeah.
Sure. Well, SIL is an organization that is passionate about helping people flourish using the languages they value most. And most people would know about us because of our work in Bible translation, in partnership with the Wycliffes and Seed Company and others. But it's our mission is a bit broader in the sense that we're also real involved in literacy, language development. If you can imagine the fonts you need with all the languages, the mobile texting platforms that are needed, dictionaries that are needed, all the tools you would need to make a language viable are things that SIL is involved with about the 7,000 languages, 7,100 languages of the world. And so it's a huge task. And my background is I'm a communications major, went to school in Chicago at Judson University. And I think one of the things that, just speaking to what James and Mary shared and then what you shared, Tommy, is that I think people that get involved in innovation are integrators. And so they tend to come from all kinds of interesting places because they tend to be people that like to put pieces together, right? And so their careers can kind of come from lots of different spaces. And so I'm a social miner as well, and just have always loved connecting the dots on society and communicating ideas. But my job is Director of Program Innovation. And I sit on a team. We got about between 10 and 15 involved in our what we call IDX, or our innovation team in SIL. And really the core reason for them creating my job is that one of the things, IDX has existed, this innovation team has existed for about 3 years in SIL. But one of the things they've realized is that it's great to have a lot of good new ideas. That's important. But if those new ideas don't lead to viable, sustainable programs, then you really can't call it a success, right? Because an idea by itself is just that, an idea. It's got to become something when it grows up. And so what we're trying to do within SIL, within our incubator and our coaching and training and our kind of change management work, is that we're really trying to say, how can we help the organization take all these wonderful good ideas and move them through a disciplined process of deciding if they are viable, if they can be a standalone business, program, initiative, and how they can work most effectively. So my job is to shepherd some of those innovation projects through that process and coach and train others as they do the same.
Yeah. And John, SIL is an older organization, right?
Yep. About 80 years. And it was started in a very holistic way, focused on serving whole communities who spoke languages. But over the years, it got very, very focused on the Bible translation component. So one of the dynamics as it tries to find its more holistic mission in the 21st century is saying we need innovation to figure out all the what we call the intersections of life and language. So you got societal life and language, you got spiritual life and language, you got academic life and language, government life and language, all these intersections where life intersects with language. And how can SIL be blessing the world in those places? Yeah.
And before this, John, you were entrepreneur. I mean, you still are an entrepreneur, but you did Generous Mind for a number of years, didn't you?
Yeah, my wife and I have a company called Generous Mind. We run a website called Innovation and Mission. I've done a lot of work in supporting and promoting innovation within the missions community, annual events and books and those sorts of things. But before this role, I worked as a CEO of Global Mapping International, which was a research company focused on supporting mission agencies with research and data visualization.
Hey, James, let me ask you, I mean, and Mary and John, but James, what does a day-to-day look like with you and your team? Is it dealing with all of the different ideas that come in? Is it launching different ideas? Talk about what that looks like for your team on a daily basis.
Yeah. You mean besides being on Zoom?
Hey, James. Oh,
I'm back.
Oh, sorry about that.
It's I'm being automatically muted. But no, I was joking that besides being on Zoom all the time these days, but
rhythm too. Our team is all around the country, and then they have teams that they're leading. So it can be really different. The main regular rhythm is that we do get together to what we say a 2-hour meeting to talk, to consecrate, collaborate, and confirm. So those are we really want to get before Jesus, really, not in any kind of superficial way, but spend a half hour in prayer, just believing that his spirit has to inspire us into new things. That our God is creative and wonderfully innovative. So we want to stay connected. And then an hour of collaborating. Like right now, we're working on orientation to new students digitally. How do we do this online with our campuses closing, and we don't know what the fall will look like with different various campuses having different scenarios, whether you're going to be face-to-face with social distancing or online or some hybrid of both. So it's been all hands on deck for the movement to say, how do we help welcome students and faculty in the fall when we can't even be on campus? Yeah, so our department has been really busy for the last 4 months. And it is a mix of all kinds of things, of idea generation, brainstorming, working things forward, getting action on the resources we need to get out. It could be just different day to day, but the main, if there's anything that's steady, is a weekly meeting at least to get us going.
Yeah. Hey, James, let me ask you a quick question. Actually, this goes in line with what we were just talking about. So COVID-19 hits, new student orientation. So suddenly, do you then get ideas from all of the different staff workers that come in? Does your team sit there and come up with ideas? And then how then do you decide what's best, and how do you test it and get buy-in from everyone, James?
Yeah, well, our movement is pretty innovative already from the get-go, because we're 4 years away. Every year, we're 4 years away from going into the dirt. Once we get irrelevant and a student generation goes by, so they have to do that. And our staff, we trust our staff. We have about 1,000 campus staff on the ground. They've got to be innovative and continue to do it. So we wouldn't try to centralize that too much. We want to give lots of permission and green light for them to do it. We wouldn't be able to control that very much. But also we have stuff, national departments and those kinds of things that also play into it. So we have what we call our DIA innovation system. We stole it from Grabbing Lightning, which we learned from a innovation professor from the Air Force Academy, who also actually did a lot of work with Singapore, Dr. Jensen. So from his recommendation, we have a discovery process, an incubation process, and an acceleration process, just to make it simple for our staff to know. So discovery, we just have lots of stuff where people can just fire ideas at us. Now it's actually set up in the last month where our staff can go onto their dashboard if they sign up to their website to see what their financials looking like, to see kind of what's going on. They get data. One of the tabs is ideas, and they could just throw stuff right at us to go into our discovery pile, and we have a system to sort through that. And then if things that are successful, when they hit a bright spot, if they want, they can apply for these incubation grants, and we help them and coach them so they can test it beyond their local context to see if it's something that could be ready for bigger prime time. And then once it moves through that, it can go to acceleration, where there's various kinds of accelerations we can do in the movement. We can't do too many top-down kinds of things because we'll get a big revolt in InterVarsity. We're not wired that way at all. But there are other ways that we can push or accelerate or get the word out. And that's a loose system. To say that's not a tight system. It's just giving people stages, ideas, ways to get funds for each of those stages, and coaching. And we really try to help people through it. And we have a yearly iSummit that helps, Innovation Summit, which allows some of these ideas to continue to get coached through. So there's a few things. We just let a lot of things grow. I'm a vineyard pastor. I'm an ordained vineyard pastor too. And John Wimber would often say, you don't know what to prune until you let it grow out. So we do allow a lot of muckworks happening, but then as things get traction, that's how we try to pay attention.
Very good. Hey, Mary, let me ask you a quick question. This is the part that I've always struggled with, right? Is suddenly you have a lot of ideas, and everyone, you sit there and you're supposed to facilitate a conversation, and everyone throws out their ideas to address their problem. Here's where I get stuck at. How then do you figure out and get everyone on the same page to agree on the idea going forward and get buy-in with the rest of the team? How do you facilitate that?
Oh, that is the money question, isn't it? I love that. No, I just want to say quickly, James, that process sounds so great. And I wish that when I was a college student, well, I guess I wouldn't have been I wasn't on staff with the organization, but man, had I been able to like submit ideas, I would have done it all day. So that's cool. I love that. I love that. That's like a process. We always
keep sending things our way. We'd be glad to take them.
We always talk about like tapping into the collective intelligence of the organization and not just a few. And so that to me, like, so good. I love that. But yeah, so I kind of, when you think about ideation, so there's a few pieces to it. One, in order to even get people to a place where they feel that they are able to share their ideas, well, especially if it's in the context of 5 or 6 people, maybe even 10 together, like sitting in a room, and they're just supposed to like throw out their ideas in that moment. It's so important to like, one, set up a safe place. So you want to really like, we have what we call our secret sauce. And it's literally just, hey guys, we're going to check into this time. We're going to be present. We are committing to embracing our inner creativity. So like James was saying, that we are all made in the image of God, and we are acknowledging that that's true, and that we are going to embrace our creativity. And then to be curious, that would be curious of each other and of the things that are here, what's being said, and then to suspend negative judgment. And so we say that, we like to say, let ideas breathe. Suspend negative judgment of yourself and of each other. And so we really try to like set that space well. And then you have to give time for all ideas to get out there. So you want quantity over quality. You want wild ideas, and you want them to like, they have to take off their hat that says every idea has to work or it's not a good idea. Because if you don't, you're not going to be able to get anywhere. Like someone will put out an idea, someone in the back says that's not going to work, and then that person will not say anything else the whole time, and you're going to miss out on so many good ideas. And so that's like the environment that's set is so important. And then once you have that, and you kind of have the ideas, maybe sometimes it's 30 minutes, maybe it's an hour, maybe it's longer. If you have the time, like sitting in that dreaming space is so good for people, but they need practice. So you have to like really help them. Then you go into, okay, now the question I like to say is, well, first you want to sort it. So you want to sort them. You want to think through like, which ideas, we like to say like the parking lot, like which ones need to just sit in the parking lot. They're not bad. They're just not relevant right now. Or it's not, like we don't have the capacity to move forward right now. And then maybe there'd be like game changers or no brainers, or, you can decide however you'd want to sort it. And then you just start, there's different ways, but you could let people like vote anonymously for which one they like, or you give them stickers so they vote for like 2 or 3. And then, so there's all these kind of techniques. But again, if you don't, and then from there, you just take it and you kind of go through and you say, how can we make this work? That's my favorite question. And sometimes you'll have to build on it more rather than saying, will it work? 9 times out of 10, no, it won't work. It's innovation. Like that's the thing. It won't work. Like we have to make it work. And so kind of like you put maybe the idea that everyone chooses out there, you build on it. And then, but if you don't set up the environment at the beginning, you're not going to get anywhere. Like that is crucial. If you don't, all you'll get is the person who started the meeting, who had the agenda going into the meeting, who had the idea that he wants everyone else to get on with. Then that's all that the meeting will be. He or she, not all he's, let me be honest, but and so I think that's just so critical when you're facilitating is it has to be safe, and then let ideas breathe. And it is, it's so much better that way.
John, let me ask you a quick question. We've worked with different ministries, or I've watched different ministries who want to innovate, but it's all conversations. They sit there and say, well, let's partner together. Let's do this together. Nothing ever gets done. You mentioned it when you introduced. How do you then take an idea where it doesn't become all talk and create a process to implement the idea?
Yeah, that's where experimentation comes in, right? That's where instead of having 20 one-hour meetings where you talk about what you want to do, you scope it out kind of like Mary's saying, and you have that way to get ideas like James is saying, and then you go, okay, now run an experiment with it, okay? I want you to, at SIL, we have a whole experimentation template, and you have to create your hypothesis. What are you going to test with your experiment? Who are the key players? All the key information, what are we going to, what resources do we need? What do we want to learn from this? And Then you run a month-long experiment, and out of that, you either say, hey, there's some legs here, there's something here that's going to work, or no, this really, essentially our hypothesis wasn't proven out, and so we just need to move on to something else. And what that does is that allows you to cut through a lot of the talk and have people prove out ideas by actually trying things. And mainly what it does is it gets you close to your customer, your audience, your beneficiary. Because in the end, a lot of times we have all these ideas and we go, oh, that would be awesome. But we never think to ask the people that it's for, if they even want it. And a lot of times when your plan, your idea hits your customer, your audience, your market, you immediately find out, oh man, they don't need what I thought at all, right? They need something totally different.
Yeah. Hey, John, let me ask you a follow-up question on that. Then once you do the experimental phase, what's the best practice for you to determine how much money do you pour toward this project? Like, and this is actually speak to not as much as you guys come from bigger organizations. This is more so small to medium-sized organizations where you have an executive director or director. You only probably have like 5-10 people in the organization where you don't have a lot of funding.
Yeah. Well, I think innovation needs to be an operational component of your organization, even if you're small. It doesn't matter your size. And so I think the key thing there is to allocate a budget, an annual budget for innovation, and then put some things in place to decide what ideas get that money. Have the ideas earn the money, right? So as you are putting things in place to do little experiments based on your ideas, you say, if I can get to a certain point with this idea, I'll allocate some money towards continuing it on, trying out some more things. But if it doesn't work its way through, we'll set that one aside. We'll try some more things. But having operational funding in place on an annual, regular basis, rather than just special grant money, I think is pretty critical. And then having the discipline.
Yeah. Hey, James, let me ask you a quick question is, as leaders, sometimes we do have egos sometimes, and we struggle with those things. Is you have an idea, you feel really strongly about it because it's your idea, but nobody wants the idea. How, as a leader, especially in a small organization where you are the CEO, do you fight the temptation not to green light your idea, but learn to listen to your team? What are the things that you need to put in place to do that?
Humility, a deep well with Jesus. Because it's threatening. It's a very threatening thing. But that's why I like what John is talking about. And that's what we try to do too in university. Before we had our DIA process, it went like people wanted to go from idea to full adoption like that. And that meant give us all this funding, make it happen right away. So if you can do really small kinds of things. So now what we say is, what's your bright spot? Instead of arguing over the model, because we're academics, right? We're like straight up in the academic world, and we're the nerds of the parachurch organizations, right? University, we're nerdy, wordy, and a little bit dirty. That's us. So there is a way that we can fight over models and just argue for hours without even trying something. So this is where what John is saying is so right on. It's we just say, can you just show us a bright spot, and we'll just give them a little bit. Yeah. So that it's not an ego game anymore, or like my idea or how persuasive I can be. It's really about, can you just try it? Put out your fleece. Ask the Lord to bless it. And if you've got a bright spot, come back. We'll give you a bigger test. And that's how we're sort of taking people through, so that if you had 100 discovery projects, we expect maybe 15 to 20 of them to be incubation, and maybe 1 or 2 to be acceleration in a given season. So, but it does take, you lay it down, but if you can keep the risk smaller, or like if you can just parse it up so people can do smaller things, then it's not so much of a threat to you. You don't have to have your idea. All of us can have an idea that we're running with, and then we can see what God might be doing with these ideas as little seeds. And if they grow, you can pour more of your resources into the ones that seem to have traction.
Yeah. Hey, Mary, is it important that it ties into your organization, the vision of your organization? Let me give you an example. Let's say a Bible translation, Wycliffe and everything like that says, man, we got to create for-profit revenues. Man, I know of an individual who could create beehives and make honey, and we could sell that. Let's do that. I mean, is that a crazy idea? Are you open to it? Does it have to tie in with your organization? What would you say about that, Mary?
Yeah, that's such a good question. I mean, I think it depends, honestly. And I'm saying this from a fairly ignorant space, and I run in my space, so I don't make big organizational decisions on those levels. So, but I will speak from just what I know and the people that I've talked to. There's definitely, I think, depending on the vision, obviously you want to stay within your mission and vision. You don't want to sidetrack just because it's great. We have one of our leaders in our organization. He says, change for the sake of change is not worth doing. Just because it's that's really cool, it's shiny, let's do it, is not necessarily always the right answer. And so, but also you don't want to disregard it just because maybe it doesn't fit in the way that it is. So I would almost make it a constraint. Okay, we have this idea. How might we make it work within our mission or vision? Or how might we, is there other people that we know that could use this idea for a different way, or in a different way, or could it still play in? So I guess that would be my thought is you have to know your mission, vision, and be really clear on that. And then also just but I'm such an advocate for don't just shut down things because you don't know quite how it could work. And so maybe, but yeah, but I think definitely the idea of that kind of new, different things that we're not used to, they can be really, really good and really, really helpful. So it's a both and would be my answer.
John, speak to scenario. You're speaking to a group of, again, small to medium size presidents or executive directors. You were once overseeing a medium-sized organization as well too. They don't have, their budget is probably $300,000 to $500,000. They probably have 4 or 5 different people in their organization. How do you create innovation? How do you even start doing that? How do you build a team? Do you find volunteers to help you? Do you have someone on your team who does that and leads exercises? What's some of your practical advice of how you could create and do that in your organization?
Yeah, it is really challenging, right? Because we're being told on all fronts as nonprofits are more and more professionalized. Oh, you have to add this, you have to add that. There's all these financial requirements, and so the CEO of a small nonprofit is always looking at the admin of the organization growing, right? That's just a natural part of professionalization. So I think one of the key things is to get outside of this idea of silos of skill sets and really get into some people call it matrix, some people call it meshed, get into a model of your leadership team where you find the people that have passion, for certain things. There will be people on your leadership team that just naturally gravitate to the new idea. It's just part of who they are. And to task them and say, hey, listen, one of the things I want you to do is help keep innovation on our radar. And we're going to set up a little budget. It won't be much. Maybe it might be just $5,000, $10,000 a year. Who knows, right? And I want you to be in charge of helping us to keep innovation as part of the regular process that our organization thinks about. When we're in staff meetings, when we're in our leadership meetings, when we're with the board, and keep that on our radar and start to develop out the way that we do innovation in our DNA, because every organization does it a little differently. And so even at that seed level, it can start to be intentional. It can start to be valuable. And then it can start to grow and develop. I mean, I've seen mid-sized nonprofits now, not the big ones, that are starting to have a VP of innovation because they're seeing that it really is tied to the future of their organization.
Yeah. John, even with us at Resource Global, I mean, we're a $600,000-$700,000 a year organization. We have what we call a test kitchen. And so we're always experimenting with 10 ideas at once. We started and we threw a city leadership center that works with Indonesian businesses. That was about 2 years in the making. We just kept throwing it a little bit, seeing, and suddenly it just got traction. Next thing you know, we started putting a staff on it in Jakarta. Then we raised about $100,000 to seed it. And now it's going really well. We did the same thing with the podcast to really be able to expand our network. So you're always different seeding. But I can tell you, 6 or 7 ideas in that test kitchen completely flopped and we just had to kill it.
Yep.
Yeah. Which actually goes to my question to you, Mary, is, so you launch an idea, you put a little money into it, it's not going well. When do you cut bait?
So we call those, we like to call those zombies just to make it a little more exciting. But yeah, so usually, I mean, one of the keys, like I said earlier, we use a process called design thinking, which is a simple 5-stage process for innovation. And the first stage is empathy. So the first stage is really prior to that, we talk a lot about assumptions and asking good questions and stuff like that. But then into that, it's, do you know who your end user is? Are you learning from them? Are you paying attention? And other words, like John was saying earlier, beneficiary, your customers, those who you serve, it's all the same thing, but different language for it. And so what we like to do when we test is we always, when we're testing our prototypes, we're always like right away testing it with our end user. So saying like, and sometimes super basic, like, we draw on a piece of paper and we go to them and we learn whether or not this could work. And then we go one small step farther and we test it with them and we test it. So the hope would be that by the time it is running and you actually put money into it and implementing it, it's working. But if there's a point that it's not, you always need to go back and you need to learn, because the people we serve change so fast. Like James was saying, like his group every 4 years, really every year, they have a whole new population of people that's very different than the year before them. That's very different than the year before that. And so before we would just cut the idea, we would probably go back, learn some more, and adapt the product or process or system for it. But then, yeah, if it came to that and it said, you know what, this just isn't working, even if we adapt it, then we cut it. And we learn from that and we say, okay, let's learn and let's make something better next time. But the hope would be these like small iterative loops, not just like, okay, we're going to do this and we're going to run it forever. But no, we're going to learn and we're going to learn and we're going to learn.
Perfect. Hey, James, and also John and Mary, some of the people who will be listening to this are in different countries, whether it's Nairobi, Southeast Asia. They don't have a lot of budget. And one bad idea sets them back a couple of years. And so let's play case study time, James, share with us, if possible, an idea that you guys had created and how did you have to work through the process? I'd love to hear a little bit something that you guys tangibly worked on.
Yeah, I'm trying to pick one right away. I mean, we're right now, we had to go online. So we're trying to help our ministries go online and do all that. One idea that just came on the radar was a national large group. So we've never done anything like that before. Uh-huh. And we just went, it does take some effort, but a lot easier than trying to fly everyone to the same place. So you take the skills that you know about putting on a large group, you get your campus staff, we have a department that does video production and some other things like that. So we went, well, how do we cobble something together? We had experience with multi-ethnic worship through Urbana. So I guess maybe the first thing we went down to see is like, what kind of expertise? What do we have? Right? It's the Gideon in Judges 6. Like, what's the strength in our hand? What do we actually have that we can run with? Because trying to do something that other people are doing is going to kill us. We're not going to get there if we have to move quick. So what do we already have? And we've looked around and, well, our campus staff are great at gathering communities. So what do they do and how did that happen? Oh, we also have Urbana. We're good at multi-ethnic worship. So let's find those musicians and maybe they could figure out a way to stitch something on. And once you build on the strengths that you have, then you're trying something. You just, like John said, it's like a goulash. You're just mixing things up and you're just hoping it goes and you put it out there. And, it's not wasn't a huge plunk down. Like, that's what I mean. The initial assumption of setting an organization 2 years back, you shouldn't be doing discovery projects that will set your organization 2 years back if it fails. Because you kind of need to downscope those then, right? Make them smaller. Do little tests so that you're not going to set people back with a bad thing later. That's why you need these processes. So we figured out a strength, put it out there. We realized, 11,000 screens watching Ivy Live. That's bigger than Urbana, for us. And we're like, oh my goodness. So then you can just go like, oh, this is huge. Okay, let's pour some more resources in it. Let's figure out what to do. How do we make this go on? And you're building off of your success while learning. There were technical difficulties. There were things that we had to shape up. It's easier if we pre-record some pieces and not try to do the whole thing live. Learn that. And we have these iterative processes where you keep learning from your failures and things that went wrong, as well as building on the strengths. So that pretty much that's how things go, right? In our organization, we don't really have to cut a lot of things because we're constantly learning. And so what people who are leads of those projects, like the staff who's excited about that idea, they either keep learning and developing the idea, or they realize at the end of that road, like, I don't feel like I want to spend that much time on this anymore because it's not going anywhere. So they tend to self-edit when you have a system, because you do have to create some ways to keep going, and they're not meeting those standards. So then they realize that's probably a bad idea. So in ways, it's really helped us to keep figuring out how to move things forward.
I love what you just said. In some sense, the first iteration, it's okay if it's not perfect, right? Because you're constantly learning. You're still constantly experimenting on different things. Now, at the same time, I also heard what you said. You've just created a big, large group that is more than Urbana. Now it forces you to pivot and maybe even ask hard questions. Hey, how does Urbana look differently? Should we make it differently? Should we even explore doing it online? It just forces you to ask different other questions too.
Oh, exactly. It took one of our big conferences. It's the only other conference we do with students every 3 years. It's our national planting conference. We had 1,200 people there last time. And now it's happening in January because of what happened with Ivy Live and a few other things that happened in our transition. That's going completely online. And there's a lot of excitement around that because before we were planning a conference for 1,500 people to plant to get to 1,000 campuses. But now it's like, oh, actually, we can actually reach more campuses now, given all the constraints. It's a weird thing to feel like getting to every campus is actually more attainable now, more possible, given all the constraints that we have. So, yeah, you're right. You just keep learning and building and taking commensurate risks based on what we've seen so far.
Yeah. Hey, Mary, talk about a project that you have seen implemented in your discussions.
Yeah, that's so good. So honestly, a lot of what we do, we have done quite a few different projects with groups. Some are kind of still in the works, some are not. We've had just a few, even especially when we were kind of early on, we did some even with our like HR team, which doesn't sound that exciting, but for us workers, it was very exciting. So, but we, and honestly, it was like there used to be just this really, really long form that everyone had to fill out. And the leaders had to do stuff, the workers had to all of this. And so again, we start with empathy, and we learned that, yeah, like this is really that, like we learned a lot about people, kind of the discovery. We learned all the different things that people like and don't like and all this stuff. We learned about who they are. And then we kind of took that into, okay, now data, what needs to be true in this kind of form and what we do. And then from there, we worked with them, we kind of walked them through a process, and then they came up, and now it's like, this much. It's like this big. But and honestly, it sounds so silly. It sounds like such a small thing. But for an organization that doesn't love changing things, like that was such a win for our team. Like it was like, yes, they listened to people. They thought differently. They said, we don't have to do this because this is always how it's been done. We can do things differently. And so that's like a small win, but it felt so big. And we've worked on different projects, even globally. But a lot of them, or many of our products, are not with our like organization. Again, we kind of work with a broader community. And so a lot of them just for like, not security necessarily, but we're not allowed to talk about all of them. But that's just one that's like kind of the space there within our own organization that really like made a huge difference. But with that, Mary, let me ask you, those other organizations, do they then pay you a certain fee or hire you in some sense? Yes. Yeah. We have a pay for service model. Yeah. So we're technically a DBA, like of our organization, so that we can have a pay for service model with other organizations. And honestly, it is like, if you work with IDEO or some of these big consulting firms, it can be upwards of $5 million for them to like solve your problem for you, like their innovation space. And so obviously that's not accessible to our community. So we wanted to have an ability to like in a way that's accessible. And then, so they pay us, and then that way we can serve our organization and our organization globally as a whole. And with that said, that in itself is innovative because a lot of times they're hiring you. I mean, they bring in staff. Is all your time devoted to organization? Well, we have some capacity. Well, let's outsource it. And through that, we're able to create revenue as well. Exactly. Yep.
Yeah, and James, I hope I'm not spoiling whatever Tom is. Even Tom and I were talking about, he was sitting there, well, even with our accounting or HR, you have all these small little organizations. Can we outsource some of those different projects? It creates revenue. That's innovation by itself.
Yes.
Yeah. Hey, John, before I turn to you, like, for instance, let me at least, like, even with Resource Global, we work with young marketplace leaders in different global cities, Jakarta, Indonesia, and Resource Global is more spiritual in nature, integration of faith and work, justice and mercy, everything through a biblical grid. And we have a mixture of speakers, marketplace leaders from Australia, from Singapore, from the US, from Great Britain, who come and teach online and in person. So then one of our young persons who sat through a lot of the spiritual biblical talk says, hey, I run a family business in a startup. Can we get them to come and talk with our guys on running their family business or their startup? And I'm saying, wait a minute, there's an idea right there. And so a lot of times we started working with churches because they have to do something with the global missions trip. So they don't want to do another VBS or painting another wall. So I said, hey, what if we get some of your key business leaders from, let's say, Google, Facebook, Procter & Gamble, whatever it is, Microsoft, take your skills in marketing, in finance, and sales, and come and train our family businesses, our Christian and their companies to really be able to do that. The Indonesian businesses says, this is great because we don't have a formal HR training network. We don't have leadership development programs. We'll pay you to do it. The churches like it because they said, wow, you've given us something to do. Hey, we're going to support you. And then those guys who come, hey, I want to support. So now suddenly you have 3 areas of revenue building your organization. It just took 2 years to develop it. Yeah. And so, it's a simple idea that we had to create as well, too. Hey, John, what about you with SIL? Talk about a project that you guys have implemented and developed in the last couple of years.
Yes, one of the ones I've been working on is a children's literacy program. You know, it can be really, really hard to fund literacy work because the outcomes are long out into the future, right? A child growing up and all that sort of thing. And plus, local languages aren't always very valued either in the local community because they want to learn the national language because that's how they get jobs, that's how they get their education, et cetera. And so one of the things that we came up with, we said, well, we know 2 things to be true. We know, number one, that it's a challenge to think that far ahead for people. They need something more tangible, more immediate. And secondly, we know that the local language isn't always as valued, right? So we know that that's a challenge in the local communities. And so we came up with a little program where children are learning about social issues like clean water, gender equity, poverty alleviation, along the lines of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, and are doing projects around those social issues while they learn to read in their local language. And the whole thing is packaged with the social issue as part of the literacy program. And then the donors in the US are really connecting in at the social issue level. And they're seeing the literacy piece as an exponential growth opportunity. And so we're testing that out right now. But one of the things I'll say is that we first have to get to what I call problem solution fit, right? Is this a solution to a problem people actually have? And what we discovered was in the local community, absolutely it was. There was great value, great connection, great intersection there. People saying, yes, this really helps bring language to the forefront. It helps us solve a local problem we're dealing with anyway. Where we found a struggle was on the donor side. Was this a problem solution fit for donors who were passionate about the social issue, seeing literacy and education as a solution to that? And that's where we are right now in the innovation. We haven't found that fit yet. And so what we're doing now, and this is what I would say to the small nonprofit around the world, is if you put up these gates, one being problem solution fit, you don't spend very much money until you know that you're actually solving a problem for the people you're trying to help. It could be both on the donor, customer, client side. It can be on the beneficiary side, because in the nonprofit, we have lots of stakeholders, right? But if you force yourself to confirm that you're actually solving a problem, then you won't get too far down the road, because very soon you can find out if you're solving a problem. And one of the ways you find out is, will they buy it? Will they donate? Will they use it? If they don't do those things, then you got to go back to the drawing board, right? You got to keep working on it because you haven't quite got it yet. Doesn't mean your idea is bad, just means that you haven't got the right mix yet. And I think, so that's where we are with this one right now is we're, before we go into the pilot phase, we've really got to figure out what is that problem solution fit, make sure we got it nailed before we move forward.
Sorry about that. Very, very good. Hey, one final question for all of you guys as we wrap up is tangibly, John, I'll start off with you. Is there a system to track all these ideas? Do you use a Trello board? Do you use simple Google Docs, or what do you tend to use?
Well, I think, there's lots of tools out there, right? Like Trello's awesome. There's a really cool site that I love out of Australia called ideaspies.com that allows you to track ideas. And they actually have a corporate version where you can do a white label version of IdeaSpies software where they help collect ideas. But honestly, what we use is really simple. We use Google. We're a Google shop at SIL. So we have we experiment template. And you essentially develop. We have a registry of all the experiments. You create your experiment, you register it, you have the owner of it, and you start filling it out. You fill out the results, and we just track it by using that template. And then when we do the debrief, I take my experiment template and I actually bring those stakeholders together, and we actually use the experiment template. We say, did we prove this hypothesis? Was it right? Was it wrong? Where did we go right? Where did we go wrong? And then you then build your next one out of that. So we do it super low cost, really something anyone could set up with a few Google Sheets.
Very good. Hey, what about you, James?
Similarly, and we're now running out of my expertise as my executive assistant / project manager takes care of those kinds of things. But we also have a template. We also have a process. I believe she's either using Google Sheets or something pretty low tech to keep track of where they are in our discovery, which are discovery projects, which are incubation projects, and which are acceleration projects.
Very, very good. How about you, Mary? What works well for you?
Yeah, I mean, similarly, it's funny that you said like low cost, that's totally, and maybe it's just the world that we live in that we do that, but it's the same. We use like Airtable is kind of our like database itself for projects that we do. I also use Google. And then one thing we learned recently, obviously just with the constraint of so much facilitation virtually and just how to do that, we've started using Lucidchart. And so you can have stickies up, you can have all these different, it's pretty cool. So we've been using that. I'm like slowly getting used to it, but that's been working really well too. So,
and Mary, you said usage chart?
So LUCID, Lucid, LUCID chart. Yeah.
Got it. Lucidchart. Very
yeah,
good.
That one, I know. That was a good one.
Yeah. Hey, guys, thank you. Do not be surprised if I call you guys back again to provide some insights. As people are working on some innovation, I may need your help again to provide some insights. So, John, James, Mary, thank you so much for your time.
Of course. Thank you.
Glad to be here. Yeah.
Well, and hopefully this actually, I know some of you guys have not met each other, so hopefully this could be the start of a little global network of innovators that you guys come together.
For sure. It's awesome.
Yeah. Well, thank you, guys. Have a wonderful 4th of July weekend, and thank you for all that you do.
Thank you so much.
Take
Bye.
care.
Bye.